7:15 on a Tuesday morning. I was halfway through my first cup of coffee when I opened the mailbox and found the certified letter that would change everything. Final notice, foreclosure proceedings. 72 hours, the mug slipped from my hand and shattered on the driveway. Coffee splattered across the concrete in a pattern that looked like a crime scene. From inside the house, I could hear Mom's oxygen machine humming its steady rhythm, the sound that had become the metronome of our days together. The letter was printed on gold-embossed HOA letterhead. Linda Pemberton Ashford's signature swooped across the bottom like she was signing the Declaration of Independence. $47,000 in accumulated fines and fees. 72 hours to pay or lose the house my father built with his bare hands in 1952. I stood there in the driveway, staring at that letter with the same expression that once made Chicago mob accountants confess to things their lawyers told them to forget. My hands didn't shake. They never do, but something cold and methodical clicked into place in my chest, the same feeling I got the first time I walked into a RICO conspiracy with a briefcase full of warrants. "Marcus, sweetheart, what is wrong?" Mom's voice drifted from the window. 82 years old, stage 4 lung cancer, maybe 3 months left if we were lucky. She had been asking me that question my whole life, reading trouble in my face before I could speak it. I folded the letter carefully and walked back inside, forcing a smile I didn't feel. "Nothing, Mom, just some HOA nonsense, I will handle it." But this wasn't nothing. This was Linda Pemberton Ashford threatening to steal the house my father James Webb, who survived Normandy and the Battle of the Bulge, built brick by brick over 2 years of weekends. The house where I learned to walk, where I brought my wife Patricia home after our wedding, where my kids spent their summers before college scattered them across the country. They had no idea what they had started. See, what Linda didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know, because I looked like every other 58-year-old guy caring for his dying mother, was that I had spent 28 years as a special agent with the IRS Criminal Investigation Division, 28 years chasing organized crime, political corruption, and financial fraud schemes that made her little HOA racket look like a lemonade stand. 47 federal indictments, 41 convictions, $340 million in seized assets. And I still had my credentials. Still had my federal arrest authority for another 4 years. Linda Pemberton Ashford was about to learn why the Chicago waste management family used to go pale when they heard my name. But I am getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how we got here. The house sits on the corner of Pine and Maple in what used to be a working-class neighborhood called Pinewood Estates. My father bought the lot in 1952 for $800 money he saved, driving a forklift at the GM plant after the war. No contractors, no mortgage, just Dad and a borrowed concrete mixer, and every able-bodied neighbor who owed him a favor or a beer. I have pictures of him laying the foundation in his undershirt, dog tags still hanging around his neck. He never talked much about Normandy, but he poured everything he couldn't say into those bricks. Every corner was square. Every joint was tight. He built it like a bunker because that is all he knew how to build. The live oak tree in the front yard he planted that the day I was born, May 17, 1966, told my mother it would outlive us all. 66 years old now. That tree, 40 feet tall, branches spreading like protective arms over the house. City designated it a heritage tree 15 years ago. There is a small metal plaque at the base, protected under City Ordinance 847B. I grew up in this house, learned to throw a baseball in that backyard, built my first radio in the garage that Dad added in '68. The wood still smells like his cigars if you know where to press your nose against the rafters. When Patricia died in 2019, breast cancer, same disease killing Mom. Now I thought about selling. The kids were grown, living their own lives in Seattle and Austin. The house felt too big, too full of ghosts. But I couldn't do it. Dad's house, Mom's house. The only constant in a life spent chasing financial criminals across federal jurisdictions. So when Mom got her diagnosis 6 months ago, I took early retirement from the IRS and moved back in full-time caregiver. That is what they call it when you help your mother to the bathroom at 3 in the morning and pretend not to notice when she cries, because she cannot remember your father's middle name anymore. The neighborhood changed while I was gone. The old families, the Thompsons, the Martinezes, the Woos, they are still here, hanging on to houses they have owned for 40-50 years. But new money moved in too. McMansions replacing modest ranches. Teslas and BMWs where pickup trucks used to park. And 6 years ago, the new residents formed an HOA. Dad would have laughed, then probably threatened to knock somebody's teeth out. He had opinions about people who thought they could tell other people what to do with property they owned free and clear. I inherited that opinion, along with his house, his tree, and apparently his talent for making enemies. The first letter arrived 3 months ago, right after I moved back in. I was spending 14-hour days at the hospital while Mom fought pneumonia, and I had forgotten to mow the lawn. Simple mistake. The kind neighbors used to handle with a friendly phone call. "Hey Marcus, you need me to run my mower over your yard?" Not anymore. Violation. Notice, lawn exceeds 3.5 inches in height as measured by HOA President Linda Pemberton Ashford on the 3rd of October at 2:17 p.m. Fine, $150. Payable within 14 days to avoid escalation. I paid it, apologized in writing, even hired a lawn service so it wouldn't happen again. Linda's response came via email. "Mr. Webb, Pinewood Estates has standards. If you cannot maintain your property to community expectations, perhaps you should consider selling to someone who can contribute positively to our neighborhood's reputation and property values." Capital letters. Like she was shouting at a child, I saved the email. Force of habit. 28 years investigating financial crimes teaches you to document everything. You never know when someone's condescending email becomes Exhibit A in a federal case. But I wasn't thinking about federal cases then. I was thinking about Mom, about hospital bills, about the hospice nurse who needed to park in my driveway 3 times a week. I should have known it wouldn't stop there. The fines came like bills from a vengeful God. One every week, each more ridiculous than the last. Week 1, trash cans visible from street, $100. I would put them out the night before pickup, exactly like I had done for 6 months, without complaint. Exactly like every other house on the block. I paid it. Week 2, mailbox damaged, $200. A car had clipped it during a rainstorm. I had already ordered a replacement, even included the tracking number in my response to the first notice. I paid it anyway. Week 3, unauthorized vehicle in driveway, $250. The unauthorized vehicle was Angela's Honda Civic. Angela, the hospice nurse who checked Mom's vitals and changed her oxygen tank, and made sure she took her pills without choking. That one I pushed back on. "Mrs. Pemberton Ashford," I wrote, keeping my tone professional despite the anger making my jaw tight. "This is medical personnel caring for a terminal cancer patient. I trust the HOA can make an exception for healthcare workers." Her response came within an hour. "Mr. Webb, I understand your situation is difficult, but rules don't have exceptions for personal circumstances. The HOA bylaws clearly state only resident vehicles in driveways, unless guest parking is utilized. Your continued violation suggests a pattern of disregard for community standards. Fine increased to $300 for repeat offense." I paid that one too, but I started taking pictures, dates, times, weather conditions. Angela's car in the driveway, the mailbox with the work order receipt taped to the post, the trash cans lined up identical to every other house on collection day. Documentation. It is what I did for nearly 3 decades. Old habits. Week 4 brought the garage door violation. Garage door left open during daytime hours, $300. I had been receiving a hospital bed delivery for Mom's room. The delivery guys needed the garage open for 37 minutes. I know because I have security footage. That is when I realized what was happening. This wasn't about community standards or property values. This was targeted harassment. Someone wanted me gone, wanted this property. I just didn't know why yet, so I started researching. Public records are wonderful things when you know how to read them. The HOA was incorporated, which meant financial disclosures. Board meeting minutes, property acquisition patterns. I filed a request with the county clerk, waited the required 30 days. When the documents arrived, they were illuminating. But by then, Linda Pemberton Ashford had already crossed a line she couldn't uncross. She had threatened my father's tree. It was a Tuesday morning when Linda's white Tesla Model X pulled into my driveway. I was outside trimming Mom's gardenia bushes, her favorite flowers. The scent reminded her of her wedding day. The smell of diesel and expensive perfume announced Linda's arrival before I even turned around. She stepped out of the Tesla like she was descending from a throne. 52 years old, blonde highlights that probably cost $300, wearing what I would come to recognize as her uniform designer athleisure that cost more than my monthly utility bill and enough jewelry to finance a modest sedan. Her husband Brett followed in a separate car, a silver Mercedes that he parked blocking my driveway. Brett Ashford, real estate developer, 55 going on, entitled. He started taking pictures with his phone before his feet hit my lawn. "Mr. Webb," Linda called out, clipboard already in hand. That clipboard, she carried it everywhere like a judge's gavel. "We need to discuss your oak tree." I set down my pruning shears and stood up slowly. My knees cracked, 58 years of gravity taking its toll. "What about my oak tree?" Linda walked to the property line, pulling out a measuring tape that she would clearly brought specifically for this purpose. Brett kept taking pictures like he was documenting a crime scene. "Your tree branches extend 8 inches over the property line into the common area," she announced, making a show of the measurement. HOA bylaws clearly prohibit encroachment. The tree must be trimmed or removed. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. That tree was older than most marriages, older than most careers. My father planted it with his bare hands the day I was born. "That tree's been there 66 years, I said, keeping my voice level. "It was here before any HOA, before most of these houses. That is irrelevant to current compliance standards." Linda made a note on her clipboard. "The fine for this violation is $500, plus $200 daily until the encroachment is corrected. $200 a day for 8 inches of branches." "I will hire an arborist," I said. "Get a professional opinion on safe trimming." Linda smiled. It was the kind of smile sharks give right before they bite. "You have 30 days. After that, we will be forced to take more aggressive action." She handed me a formal notice, already printed and signed. Professional, planned. "Oh, and Brett," she turned to her husband. "Didn't you mention you know a developer interested in this lot?" Brett nodded, lowering his phone. "That is right. With the tree gone and some modern updates, this property could be very valuable. We would be happy to make you an offer, Marcus, save you all this hassle." And there it was, the real game. They didn't want compliance. They wanted my property. "I am not selling," I said quietly. "This house was built by a World War II veteran who survived Normandy. My father, and that tree was planted the day I was born, so unless you have got a court order, we are done here." Linda's smile didn't waver, but something shifted in her eyes. "Calculation, reassessment, 30 days, Mr. Webb. Then we will see who needs a court order." They left, Tesla and Mercedes driving away in formation like a 2-car parade of entitlement. I stood there in my yard, smelling gardenias and diesel exhaust, and made a decision. I went inside, past Mom sleeping in her hospital bed in what used to be the dining room, and into my home office. Opened my desk drawer and pulled out my credentials. Marcus James Webb, Special Agent, Internal Revenue Service Criminal Investigation Division. Badge, number 28. 47, Federal Law Enforcement Authority. Retained for 5 years post-retirement, still valid. Still active if I needed them to be. I made a phone call to Chicago. My old partner Dave answered on the second ring. "Dave, it is Marcus. I need a favor." Full background workup on Linda Pemberton Ashford and Brett Ashford. "Everything, Marcus." "Jesus, I thought you were riding off into the retirement sunset. What is going on?" "HOA trouble," Dave laughed. "You are calling in federal resources for an HOA dispute? That is like using a nuclear weapon on a mosquito. Just wait until you see the background check. I have got a feeling these mosquitoes have been drinking a lot of blood. I will have it to you in 72 hours. "Thanks, Dave. I owe you. You owe me nothing. You saved my ass on the New Jersey case. This is beer money." I hung up and looked at the photo on my desk. Dad in his army uniform, young and serious. Before Normandy took pieces of him, he never got back. Next to it, Mom and Dad on their wedding day, her holding a bouquet of gardenias. "Sorry, Dad," I said to the photo. "I know you always said revenge was for people with too much time and too little sense. But this isn't revenge. This is accountability. The difference matters." 3 days later, the arborist gave me his assessment. Trimming those branches would kill the tree structural damage, disease vulnerability, the whole 9 yards. The only options were leaving it alone or removing the entire tree. Cost for removal $8,500. I called the city forestry department. They confirmed what I already knew: heritage tree protection. Removing it required a city permit, which they wouldn't grant for an HOA property dispute. I sent Linda a polite email explaining the situation, citing City Ordinance 847B, attaching the arborist's report, and the forestry department's letter. Her response came that same evening: "Mr. Webb, HOA authority supersedes city regulations per our recorded bylaws. You have 25 days remaining. Remove the tree or face foreclosure proceedings for accumulated fines. This is your final warning." That is when I knew this was going to war. The monthly HOA meeting was held at the community center, a converted elementary school cafeteria that still smelled like whatever they had served for lunch in 1987. 60 residents showed up, about average for a neighborhood of 120 households. Most people didn't care enough to attend unless Linda was threatening their property specifically. I sat in the back row, notepad in my lap, phone in my pocket already recording. One-party consent state, beautiful thing. Linda ran the meeting like a corporate board presentation. PowerPoint slides, quarterly financial reports, updates on neighborhood beautification projects. She was good at this, I had to admit, confident, professional. The kind of person who could convince you the sky was green if she had a slide deck supporting it. Then she got to the problem properties section. My house appeared on the screen, photographed from multiple angles. The tire ruts in my lawn from where Linda had driven her Tesla across it 3 months ago. The oak tree with its branches extending into common area. The mailbox that had been damaged and replaced. Each issue highlighted in red circles like evidence markers at a crime scene. Mr. Webb, Linda said, and 60 heads turned to look at me, refuses to comply with basic community standards. She clicked to the next slide. A cost analysis. His non-compliance has cost this community an estimated $4,200 in administrative fees, legal consultations, and property value impact assessments. I stayed quiet, let her talk, let her dig. This homeowner believes his property is exempt from our rules, she continued, her voice rising into that righteous indignation register. People like Mr. Webb bring down everyone's home values. His non-compliance costs you money. A few murmurs of agreement from her supporters. Sharon Mitchell, the Hendersons, a couple others who I had later discovered were receiving financial incentives from the HOA for their loyalty. But I also saw other faces. Ray Thompson, 81 years old, sitting with his wife Dorothy. Both of them had lived here for 42 years. Ray's face was red, his jaw tight. "Now, hold on," Ray said, standing up with the careful slowness of arthritic knees. "That is James Webb's house. That man fought at Normandy. This isn't about history." Linda cut him off smoothly. "This is about property values today. This is about community standards that benefit everyone. By destroying a 66-year-old heritage tree." I said it quietly. But the room went silent. Linda's smile tightened. "The tree encroaches on common property. City heritage status is irrelevant to HOA jurisdiction." I stood up slowly, pulling out the city forestry letter from my notebook. "Actually, Mrs. Pemberton Ashford, I have a letter here from the City Forestry Department stating that heritage tree protections supersede HOA regulations. I also have an arborist report indicating that trimming the branches you are demanding would kill the tree entirely. So unless you are asking me to destroy a 66-year-old tree my father planted the day I was born, I am not sure what compliance looks like." The room was watching now, really watching. This wasn't a one-sided presentation anymore. Linda's husband Brett stood up from the front row. "If you cannot afford to maintain your property properly," he said, his voice dripping with condescension, "maybe you should sell to someone who can." And there was the script again, the same play. Remove the tree, drive down the property value, force the sale. "I am not selling," I said. "This house was built by my father, a World War II veteran, with his bare hands. That tree has been there longer than most people in this room have been alive. I am not removing it, and I am not leaving." Linda called for a vote. All in favor of authorizing legal action against Mr. Webb for non-compliance with HOA tree removal order. 23 hands went up. All the same people who always voted with Linda, all opposed 31 hands, including Ray Thompson, who raised his hand so high I thought his shoulder might dislocate. 6 abstentions, the motion failed. Linda's face didn't change, but I saw her knuckles go white on that clipboard. "The board will proceed with legal action regardless," she announced. "Per our bylaws, the board has authority to act in the community's best interest without majority approval," which was, I was fairly certain, completely illegal, but I let her say it. Let her hang herself with her own words while my phone recorded every syllable. "Mr. Webb, you have 23 days. Remove the tree or face foreclosure." I went home that night and sat with Mom while she watched Wheel of Fortune, her oxygen machine hissing like a mechanical metronome. "How was the meeting, sweetheart?" she asked during a commercial break. "Fine, Mom. Everything's fine." She looked at me with eyes that had watched me grow up, watched me become a federal agent, watched me bury my wife. Eyes that saw through every lie I would ever told. "They are not really going to cut down your father's tree, are they?" I took her hand, paper-thin skin over bird bones. "No, Mom, I promise you, they are not." She smiled and turned back to the television. "Your father would have handled this differently, probably would have gotten arrested." "Yeah, probably. You got his stubbornness," she said, "but you got my patience. That is a dangerous combination for people who underestimate you." She fell asleep before Final Jeopardy. I sat there in the dark, listening to her breathe, and opened my laptop. Dave's background report had arrived. 47 pages of financial history, court records, business filings, and the kind of red flags that make federal agents smile. Linda Pemberton Ashford, bankruptcy in 2012. Current debt, $270,000. Income, $67,000 as a struggling real estate agent. Brett Ashford, 2 failed developments, multiple foreclosures. Currently working on Pinewood Estates, luxury redevelopment, a project that required acquiring 15 properties to be viable. He had already purchased 3, all from elderly homeowners, all below market value. They weren't running an HOA, they were running a protection racket. I opened a new folder on my desktop and titled it Operation Pinewood. Then I started building the case. 6:47 a.m. I woke to the sound of chainsaws for a moment. Lying in my bed, I thought I was dreaming. But the roar was real, mechanical and violent, cutting through the early morning quiet like a blade through silk. I ran outside in my pajama pants and undershirt, barefoot on dew-wet grass. 3 men in Pemberton landscaping shirts were cutting down my father's tree. The smell hit me first, diesel fumes and fresh sawdust, the scent of destruction. Wood chips flew in the morning light like shrapnel. A massive limb crashed to the ground, the sound making my teeth vibrate. "Stop!" I shouted, running across the lawn. "You don't have permission to do this." The foreman, a thick-necked guy in his 40s, killed his chainsaw and pulled out paperwork. HOA work order. Tree removal authorized by Pemberton Ashford, says right here. He showed me the form. Linda's signature swooping across the bottom. "I am the homeowner," I said, my voice steady, despite the rage making my vision tunnel. "I didn't authorize this." He shrugged, a gesture perfected by contractors everywhere when faced with ownership disputes. "Take it up with the HOA. Man, we are just doing our job." I pulled out my phone and called 911. The police arrived 15 minutes later. By then, the tree was 40% destroyed, the main trunk cut through, massive branches lying across my lawn like fallen soldiers. Officer Rodriguez stepped out of his cruiser, taking in the scene with the weary expression of someone who had dealt with HOA disputes before. "Sir," he said after I explained the situation, "if they have an HOA work order, this is a civil matter, not criminal." "That tree is city-designated heritage tree," I said, pulling out my phone to show him the forestry letter. "Cutting it down is a misdemeanor under city ordinance. 847B. Rodriguez's expression changed. He called his supervisor, then city forestry. 20 minutes of phone calls, while the tree bled sap onto my lawn. The work was stopped, but the damage was done. The tree would die. You don't cut through 40% of a 66-year-old oak's main trunk and expect it to survive. My father's tree, the tree he planted the day I was born, gone. I stood there in my pajamas, watching the foreman pack up his chainsaw, and felt something cold and final settle in my chest. This wasn't about property values anymore. This wasn't about HOA compliance or neighborhood standards. This was war from the window. I heard Mom cry out, her voice, weak and frightened, calling my name. I ran inside and found her collapsed by the window, clutching her oxygen tank, tears streaming down her face. Her blood pressure monitor was alarming 180/110, pulse racing. "Jimmy's tree," she sobbed, looking at me with eyes that barely saw me anymore. "They killed Jimmy's tree." I called the ambulance. Saturday with her on the floor while we waited, holding her hand, telling her it was going to be okay, even though we both knew it wasn't. The paramedics arrived, loaded her onto a stretcher, took her to the hospital while I followed in my truck, still wearing my pajama pants because there wasn't time to change. The ER doctor met me in the waiting room 3 hours later. "Your mother's stable," he said. "But Mr. Webb, you need to understand something. Her heart cannot take this kind of stress. Another incident like this could kill her." I sat with Mom in the hospital room that night. They had sedated her, given her something to bring down the blood pressure, to slow her racing heart. She looked small in that bed, 90 pounds of woman who had raised me and buried my father, and was now dying of the same disease that took my wife. "I am sorry, Mom," I whispered. "I should have stopped them," but she couldn't hear me. The sedation had pulled her under, away from the pain and the fear and the sight of her husband's tree being destroyed. I sat there until visiting hours ended, then drove home to a front yard covered in sawdust and the stump of my father's legacy. A certified letter was waiting in the mailbox. Bill for emergency tree removal services, $8,500. Payment due within 14 days or amount will be added to existing HOA lien. Linda had sent me a bill for destroying my tree. At the bottom, a handwritten note, "Dear Mr. Webb, sorry about the confusion. The tree was a safety hazard. We acted in the community's best interest." Linda, I stood there in the dark, reading that note by porch light, and something shifted in my brain. 28 years of federal law enforcement training, of building RICO cases against organized crime, of methodical documentation, and strategic patience, all of it aligned into a single, crystal-clear purpose. Linda Pemberton Ashford thought she had won, thought she had broken me, thought the grieving son caring for his dying mother would fold under pressure. She had no idea I had spent 3 decades making people like her face federal prosecution. I went into my office, opened my desk drawer, pulled out my credentials and my phone. I called Janet Reeves, my former supervisor at IRS in Washington, D.C. She answered on the 3rd ring, voice thick with sleep. "Marcus, do you know what time it is, Janet? I need to activate a criminal investigation." Silence on the other end. "Then, Marcus, you are retired." "I still have credentials. This is organized crime targeting elderly veterans, elder abuse, financial fraud, Rhode Island co-conspiracy. I need to be reactivated. What is the case?" I told her everything. The harassment, the tree, mom in the hospital, the pattern of elderly homeowners being forced out. The financial documents I had pulled showing fake contractors and missing money. When I finished, Janet was quiet for a long moment. "Send me the preliminary evidence packet. If it is what you say, I will authorize reactivation." "But Marcus, yeah, you are not going alone. This is a federal case. You will get a team." "I don't need a team. You are getting one anyway. Send the packet. I will have an answer in 48 hours. I spent the next 2 days building the preliminary report. 94 pages of documentation, financial analysis, victim identification, and evidence that Linda and Brett Ashford were running a criminal enterprise disguised as a homeowners association. Janet's response came via encrypted email. "Jesus Christ. Marcus, you are reactivated. 60-day special assignment. Team assigned, Special Agent Carlos Mendoza, Irsai, Special Agent Jennifer Park, VIF-BI, OSA Michael Chen. Dojo conference call scheduled for Monday 9 a.m. Don't do anything stupid before then." I sat back in my office chair and looked at my father's photo on the wall. "Sorry, Dad," I said to his army portrait, "but I am about to go to war, just like you taught me. Except my battlefield is a spreadsheet, and my weapon is a federal indictment." From the bedroom, Mom called out weakly. "Marcus, are you talking to yourself again? Just talking to Dad, Mom." "Tell him." I said the tree was beautiful, even at the end. I went to her bedside and held her hand until she fell back asleep. Outside, the stump of my father's tree sat in the moonlight like a gravestone. The war had started. The federal investigation officially kicked off on a Monday morning conference call that sounded like a legal thriller come to life. Special Agent Carlos Mendoza, IRS Financial Crimes Unit, had a voice like gravel mixed with coffee. "So let me get this straight, Marcus. You are telling me this HOA has been running a 6-year fraud operation, targeting elderly homeowners, and using fake contractors to embezzle fees?" "That is the preliminary assessment," I said, spreading the HOA financial documents across my desk. $340,000 in collected fines over 6 years. $220,000 in payments to contractors, all shell companies owned by board members' family. $120,000 just. Missing Special Agent Jennifer Park, FBI white-collar crime, had that sharp precision I recognized from my own career. How many victims are we talking? 47 total affected homeowners. 12 primary targets, all elderly, all original residents, all owning property outright. Pattern suggests forced acquisition for real estate development. Assistant U.S. Attorney Michael Chen made a sound like a predator spotting prey. "Marcus, this isn't just fraud. This is elder abuse, Rhode Island co-conspiracy, mail fraud, wire fraud. We could bury these people, that is the idea," I said. Janet Reeves' voice cut through the excitement. "Marcus gets lead investigator. This is his case, his neighborhood, his witnesses. Mendoza handles financial forensics, park coordinates with FBI field office. Chen starts building the prosecution framework. We run this clean, people, no shortcuts." "Yes, madam," we all said in unison. Old habits. After the call ended, I spent the next week doing what I do best, building an airtight case. Step 1 was victim identification. I already knew the 12 primary targets from cross-referencing violation notices with property records. Now I needed to meet them, document their stories, gather their evidence. Ray Thompson's house was first on my list. I knocked on his door at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday, federal credentials in my jacket pocket, notepad in my hand. Ray answered, still in his bathrobe, despite the late morning hour. 81 years old, retired machinist, owner of the same house for 42 years. "Marcus," he said, surprised. "What brings you by?" I showed him my badge. "Ray, I am investigating HOA financial irregularities. I need to ask you some questions about fines you have been charged." His expression shifted from confused to understanding to something like relief. You are investigating them, the HOA. Federal investigation. Can I come in?" He practically pulled me inside. His wife Dorothy met us in the living room, her eyes red like she had been crying. They sat me down on a couch that probably dated back to 1985 and told me everything. $23,000, Ray said, his voice shaking. $23,000 in fines over 3 years. They said our fence color was non-compliant. The fence was white for 40 years. They suddenly decided it needed to be beige. We paid to have it repainted, Dorothy added. Cost us $4,000. Then they said the shade of beige was wrong. Another fine, another repaint. It never ended. I took notes, photographed their documentation, recorded their testimony. They had kept everything, every notice, every payment receipt, every email exchange with Linda. "Have they made any offers to purchase your property?" I asked. Ray's face went dark. Brett Ashford showed up last month, said they would take the house off our hands for $180,000. Market value is $340,000. Said it would save us the hassle of dealing with HOA fines. What did you say? I told him to go to hell. This is Dorothy's house. We will die here before we sell to those vultures. I visited 11 more families that week. Hector Martinez, 74, widower. His wife Rosa died of Alzheimer's last year. While he was caring for her, the HOA fined him $31,000 for lawn maintenance violations and unauthorized caregiver vehicles. Betty Wu, 68, retired elementary school teacher. $19,000 in fines for garden gnomes, gifts from 30 years of former students that Linda deemed tacky and lowering property values. Every story was the same. Elderly homeowners, impossible standards. Escalating fines. Eventually, an offer from Brett to purchase below market value. By the end of the week, I had 347 pages of documentation, 12 victim statements, photo evidence, financial records showing the pattern clear as day. Special Agent Mendoza analyzed the HOA financials and found what I had suspected. Pemberton Green Landscaping. Linda's brother owns it. $67,000 in payments. Ashford and Associates Legal Consulting, Brett's cousin. $89,000 Summit Solutions. Property Management. Linda's the consultant. $52,000 self-dealing, I said. Classic embezzlement. It gets better, Mendoza continued. Brett's development company has a $180,000 loan from Linda's brother. The money's moving in circles, all within the family. Special Agent Park found the smoking gun in Brett's business filings. Pinewood Estates luxury redevelopment, filed with the State Planning Commission 6 months ago, needs 15 properties to be viable. He has already got 3, all acquired from elderly homeowners right after HOA harassment campaigns. Osa Chen was practically giddy when I briefed him. Marcus, this is RICO, textbook racketeering, wire fraud, mail fraud, elder abuse, money laundering. We are looking at 10-year minimums on multiple counts. How long to build the prosecution? With your documentation, we could present to a grand jury next month, but I didn't want to move that fast. I wanted Linda and Brett to dig themselves deeper. I wanted them confident, arrogant, convinced they had won. So I paid the $8,500 tree removal bill, created a paper trail, attended the next HOA meeting with my phone recording every word, watched Linda brag about cleaning up the neighborhood, and Brett mentioned successfully encouraging 3 more property sales this quarter. Every word was evidence. Every overreach was another year in federal prison. Meanwhile, Mom came home from the hospital. Weaker now, needing oxygen 24 hours a day. But she came home. I set up her hospital bed in what used to be the dining room so she could look out at where Dad's tree used to stand. You are planning something, she said one afternoon while I was helping her eat soup. I can see it in your face. Same expression your father got right before he did something stupid. And brilliant. I am just taking care of some business, Mom. Marcus James Webb. I raised you. I know when you are plotting. What are you going to do to that HOA woman? I set down the soup bowl and looked at her, this tiny, dying woman who had taught me right from wrong, who had buried her husband and now was counting her last days in a house he had built. I am going to make sure she faces justice, federal justice. For what she did to you, to Dad's tree, to every elderly person in this neighborhood she has been terrorizing. Mom smiled, that fierce smile I remembered from childhood when she had defended us against the world. Your father would be proud. But Marcus, don't do it for revenge. Do it because it is right, yes, madam, and make sure it hurts. I laughed despite everything. Yes, madam. 60 days after the tree came down, I received the foreclosure notice. $47,000 in accumulated fines. 30 days to pay, or the property would be sold at auction. Linda's letter was almost gleeful. Mr. Webb, we regret this action, but rules must be enforced. Perhaps now you will understand that Pinewood Estates has standards. I read the letter, filed it with the other evidence, and called Osa Chen. She just committed felony witness intimidation, I said. We have got her. Grand jury is scheduled for next week, Chen replied. How does it feel to be back in the game? I looked at Mom sleeping in her hospital bed, at the photo of Dad in his army uniform, at the stump outside my window. Feels like justice, I said. The call to Channel 9 News was calculated, strategic. I had spent 28 years understanding how media pressure accelerates investigations. Now it was time to apply that knowledge. Sarah Chen, investigative journalist, answered her desk phone on the third ring. Chen, Miss Chen, my name is Marcus Webb. I have a story you will want to cover. HOA threatening to foreclose on dying World War II veteran's widow while her son provides end-of-life care. Silence for exactly 3 seconds. Then, I am listening. I gave her the elevator pitch. Heritage tree destroyed. 82-year-old cancer patient hospitalized from stress. $47,000 in fraudulent fines. A pattern of elder abuse targeting 12 families. Federal investigation already underway. Can I interview your mother? Sarah asked. I looked at Mom. Awake now, listening to my half of the conversation, Mom, I said, covering the phone. Television interview to help other families. She nodded, reaching for her oxygen mask. If it helps, sweetheart. Your father always said sunlight was the best disinfectant. The interview aired on Thursday at 6 p.m. Sarah and her cameraman spent 2 hours at the house that afternoon, filming everything with the care of documentary makers. Mom in her hospital bed, oxygen tank hissing, photos of Dad in his army uniform visible in the background. Her voice was weak but clear. My husband built this house with his own hands after he came home from Normandy. He planted that tree the day Marcus was born, and they cut it down like it was nothing. The cameraman got footage of the tree stump, the sawdust still visible in the grass, the certified letter billing me $8,500 for the destruction. They doorbell interviewed Linda at her McMansion, her no comment, and the door slamming in Sarah's face made excellent television. Brett they caught in his driveway, climbing out of his Mercedes. This is a misunderstanding, he shouted, then drove away too fast for a residential street. The story went viral, 340,000 local views in the first 24 hours. Picked up by national news by Friday morning. Good Morning, America ran a segment. Reddit's R-Fuck HOA thread hit 47,000 upvotes. Twitter hashtag Pinewood Estates, scam trended locally. The real-world consequences came fast. Linda's real estate license, 89 complaints, filed with the state licensing board in 3 days. Her brokerage firm released a statement investigating these serious allegations. Brett's development projects, 2 pending luxury condo developments lost financing. Banks don't like lending to people under federal investigation. The HOA meeting that week drew 180 residents. The community center couldn't hold them all. People stood in the parking lot watching through windows. Linda tried to open the meeting like nothing had changed. Let's maintain civility. And remember, we are all neighbors. Here you cut down a dying woman's tree. Someone shouted from the back. I didn't see who. The meeting devolved into chaos. Residents demanding financial audits. Questions about the fake contractors. Ray Thompson stood up and told his story about the 23,000 in fence violations. Others followed. Hector Martinez, Betty Wu, a dozen voices, all victims, all finding courage in numbers. Linda tried to regain control, but the crowd wasn't having it. This wasn't her meeting anymore. It was a reckoning. These accusations are false and defamatory. Linda announced, her voice shaking for the first time I had ever heard. We are the victims of a coordinated smear campaign led by a disgruntled homeowner who refuses to follow basic community standards. I stood up from the back row. The room quieted. Mrs. Pemberton Ashford, I said calmly, I have filed complaints with the FBI, the IRS, the state attorney general, and the county district attorney. Federal investigators have interviewed 12 families in this neighborhood. Every word I have said is documented. This isn't a smear campaign. It is called accountability. Her face went white. You filed federal complaints? Yes, madam. Wire fraud, mail fraud, elder abuse, Rhode Island, co-conspiracy. The investigation is ongoing. The room erupted again. Residents shouting questions, demanding answers. Linda's core supporters Sharon Mitchell, the Hendersons looking around like they suddenly realized they were on the wrong side. Ausa Chen had filed an emergency restraining order that afternoon. It was served at 7:45 p.m., right as the meeting was falling apart. A process server walked through the crowd and handed Linda the order in front of everyone. Linda Pemberton Ashford, you are hereby ordered to cease all foreclosure proceedings against Marcus Webb and 11 other plaintiffs pending federal investigation into fraud and elder abuse. She read the order, her hands shaking so badly the papers rustled. Brett grabbed it from her, read it, and went pale. "This is ridiculous," Brett said. But his voice had lost its confidence. "We haven't done anything wrong." "Then you will have nothing to worry about," I said. They left the meeting early, walking through a silent crowd that parted like water around stones. Nobody said a word as they passed. The silence was louder than any accusation. After they were gone, Ray Thompson approached the table. I motioned to dissolve the Pinewood Estates, HOA pending results of the federal investigation. "Second," Dorothy called out. The vote was unanimous. 180 residents, every hand raised. The HOA was done. I went home that night and sat with Mom. She had watched the news coverage, seen the interview, heard the update about the restraining order. "How do you feel?" I asked. She smiled, thin and tired but genuine, like your father's watching. Like justice might actually exist after all. "It is not over yet, Mom. The real fight starts when they go to trial." "Will I?" She paused, gathering strength. "Will I be here to see it?" I held her hand. "I am going to try my hardest to make sure you are." She fell asleep holding my hand. Oxygen machine humming, breathing steady for the first time in weeks. Outside, protesters had set up on Linda's lawn. Veterans groups, elder rights advocates. Someone brought a banner, "HOAs for people, not profit." Linda posted on Facebook that night, "These accusations are false and defamatory. We are the victims here." She deleted the post 2 hours later after her lawyer probably called screaming. But screenshots live forever. I saved 3 copies just in case. Special Agent Park called at 11 p.m. "Marcus, we have got a problem." "What kind of problem?" Linda's panicking. She just withdrew $12,000 in cash from the HOA operating account. No documentation. Her brother's transferring funds offshore. They are trying to move money before we can freeze assets. I smiled in the dark. Let them. Every transaction is another charge. How long until we can present to the grand jury? 2 weeks. Maybe less if they keep doing stupid things. They will, I said. Desperate people always do. That night, I added 3 new sections to the evidence file. Attempted asset concealment. Destruction of financial records. Ray had seen Brett shredding documents in his garage. Witness intimidation. Linda had sent threatening emails to Betty Wu, telling her to keep quiet or face consequences. The evidence pile was becoming a mountain. And Linda and Brett were still digging. Linda's desperation became obvious in her next move. She called an emergency HOA board meeting, just the board. No residents, and passed a motion to expel me from HOA membership for defamation and media interference. The vote was 41. Only Linda's inner circle remained. Her sister Carol, Brett, Sharon Mitchell, who was apparently Brett's cousin, a fact I had only recently discovered, and Tom Henderson, who owned one of the fake contractor companies. The sole dissenting vote came from Mrs. Chen, an elderly board member who had been too scared to speak up before. She called me an hour after the vote. "Mr. Webb, I am so sorry. I should have said something years ago. I only joined the board because they said they had fixed my roof. They never did. Mrs. Chen, I need you to do something for me. Anything. Document everything. Every conversation, every meeting, every financial decision. Can you do that?" "I have been doing it for 2 years," she said quietly. "I have copies of everything." Linda kept me on the board because she thought I didn't understand English well enough to matter. She was wrong. Mrs. Chen became our inside witness. 76 years old, retired paralegal, fluent in 3 languages, and carrying a grudge that had been building for years. She had everything. Financial records Linda thought were destroyed, recorded board meetings, email chains, showing the coordination between Linda and Brett. "Why didn't you come forward before?" I asked when she brought me 3 boxes of documentation. "I was scared," she admitted. "My husband died 5 years ago. I am alone. I thought if I fought them, I would lose my house. But then I saw what they did to your mother. To that tree, I realized I was already losing everything that mattered. My dignity, my conscience, my soul." The new fine arrived via certified mail, $75,000 for damages to HOA reputation. The foreclosure was accelerated, 14 days instead of 30. Ausa Chen added witness intimidation to the growing list of charges. But Linda wasn't done. She made one final, catastrophic mistake. She went on Facebook and posted publicly, "Urgent, emergency community meeting. Topic: removing Marcus Webb's false accusations and restoring order to Pinewood Estates. All residents required to attend or face fines. Saturday 10 a.m. City Hall." The post was up for 4 hours before her lawyer made her delete it. But again, screenshots. And more importantly, her language required to attend or face fines. That is called coercion. Federal prosecutors love coercion. Special Agent Mendoza called that afternoon, "Marcus, the grand jury is next Tuesday. We are presenting all charges: wire fraud, 47 counts, mail fraud, 23 counts, RICO conspiracy, elder abuse, 12 counts, tax evasion, 6 counts, witness intimidation, 3 counts, money laundering, 4 counts. What is the expected outcome? With your documentation, true bill on everything. We will have sealed indictments by Wednesday. When do you want to execute arrest warrants?" I thought about it. Linda had scheduled that mandatory community meeting for Saturday. The city had already approved it, ironically, because so many residents wanted to attend. They had moved it to City Hall auditorium to accommodate the crowd. "Saturday morning," I said, during her community meeting. "Make it public, Marcus." Mendoza hesitated. "That is showboating. We usually do arrests quietly. These people destroyed a dying woman's tree and traumatized an entire neighborhood of elderly residents. They have been running this scam for 6 years. I want every victim to see justice happen in real time." Silence on the line. Then, "I will coordinate with Park and Chen. But Marcus, this is your last active case. Go out with a bang, but make sure it is by the book always." I spent that week in quiet preparation. Mom's health was declining. The hospice nurse increased her morphine dosage. Some days she was lucid, telling stories about Dad, about the house, about the tree. Other days she barely recognized me. "Am I going to see justice?" she asked one afternoon, her voice barely above a whisper. "Saturday, Mom. If you can hold on until Saturday, I will try, sweetheart. Your father always said I was stubborn." Friday night. I sat in my office reviewing the entire case file one last time. 6 years of HOA fraud, 12 elderly victims, $470,000 in stolen fees, $220,000 in fake contractor payments, $250,000 still missing, probably in offshore accounts we were still tracking, 47 counts of wire fraud, 23 counts of mail fraud, 1 count of RICO conspiracy, 12 counts of elder abuse, 6 counts of tax evasion, 4 counts of money laundering, 3 counts of witness intimidation. Potential sentence, 140 years combined for Linda and Brett if convicted on everything. My phone rang at 11 p.m. Janet Reeves. "Marcus, the grand jury returned the true bill. We have sealed indictments for Linda Pemberton Ashford, Brett Ashford, and 3 co-conspirators. Arrest warrants signed. You are authorized to assist in execution tomorrow morning." "I will be there, Marcus. Your mother would be proud." "Hell, I am proud. This is textbook federal prosecution." "Thanks, Janet. Now go get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a long day." I checked on Mom one last time. She was sleeping, oxygen mask on, monitors beeping steadily. I kissed her forehead, paper thin skin, cool to the touch. "Almost over, Mom. Just hold on a little longer." Saturday morning dawned clear and cold. I put on my suit, the same one I had worn to federal court for 28 years, and my credentials, checked my badge, made sure my phone was fully charged. The City Hall auditorium was already filling when I arrived at 9:30, 400 people, maybe more. Every victim family, curious residents. Media from 6 stations. This was the biggest story Pinewood Estates had ever seen. Linda and Brett arrived at 9:55, both in expensive suits, both flanked by attorneys. They looked confident, rehearsed, ready to defend themselves against what they clearly believed were just accusations. They had no idea federal agents were already positioned at every exit. The show was about to begin. City Hall auditorium at 10 a.m. on a Saturday morning looked like a trial had already begun. 470 people crammed into a space designed for 350. Standing room only against the back walls. 6 television cameras set up on tripods. Live stream hitting 12,000 viewers before the meeting even started. I sat in the back row, same as I had at the HOA meeting. But this time, I wasn't alone. Special Agent Park sat 2 rows ahead, disguised in civilian clothes. Special Agent Mendoza was stationed near the side exit. Osa Chen was in the audience with 2 federal marshals in plain clothes. 8 FBI agents were positioned outside, waiting for my signal. Linda commanded the front table like a general preparing for battle. Brett sat beside her, both attorneys flanking them like bookends. Her white pantsuit probably cost $1,000. His navy suit was bespoke. They looked every inch the successful professionals they pretended to be. The city council opened the meeting at exactly 10 a.m. Ladies and gentlemen, Councilwoman Rodriguez began. We are here to address concerns about HOA governance, specifically regarding Pinewood Estates. We have multiple speakers today, including residents with complaints, and a special investigator from federal law enforcement. Linda's head snapped up at that. Federal investigator who? That would be me. I stood up from the back row. The room went silent except for the hum of the television cameras and someone's nervous cough. Linda's face drained of color. Wait, Webb. Brett stood up, pointing at me like I had just pulled a gun. That is the homeowner. This is a conflict of interest. He cannot be an investigator. I walked down the center aisle, credentials held high. My name is Marcus James Webb, Special Agent, Internal Revenue Service, Criminal Investigation Division. I held up my badge for the room to see, gold shield, federal authority, the real deal. The audience gasped, literally gasped, like something out of a movie. I spent 28 years investigating organized crime, political corruption, and financial fraud, I continued, reaching the front podium. For the past 6 months, I have been investigating the Pinewood Estates. HOA. Linda turned to her attorney, panic in her eyes. He is a federal agent. He is a federal agent. How is he a federal agent? Her attorney had gone pale. You told me he was just a retired guy caring for his mother. He is just. Linda started. I am retired, I interrupted calmly, but I retained my credentials and federal arrest authority for 5 years post-retirement. 60 days ago, I was reactivated for this investigation. I connected my laptop to the projection screen. My first slide appeared, Operation Pinewood, a federal RICO investigation. The room erupted in whispers. This presentation contains evidence gathered over 6 months, I said. Financial records, victim testimony, surveillance footage, and documented criminal activity spanning 6 years. Click, next slide. Timeline 2018-2024. Linda Pemberton Ashford and Brett Ashford conspired to defraud elderly homeowners through systematic harassment, excessive fines, and forced property acquisition. Click financial breakdown. $470,000 collected in fines from 47 families. $220,000 paid to fake contractors, all owned by board members' relatives. $250,000 embezzled or hidden in offshore accounts. I showed the invoices. Greenscape Solutions, Linda's brother Ashford and Associates Legal, Brett's cousin. Summit Property Management, Linda as consultant. Click the victims. Photos of 12 elderly homeowners appeared on screen. Ray and Dorothy Thompson, 81 and 79. Hector Martinez, 74, widower, Betty Wu, 68. Retired teacher, each face, each story, each dollar stolen. These are World War II families, I said, my voice steady. Korean War veterans, lifelong residents. All targeted because they owned valuable property outright. All harassed into selling below market value to Brett Ashford's development company. Click Brett's acquisition list. 15 properties highlighted on a neighborhood map. 3, already purchased. 12 others under active harassment. The audience was dead silent. Now you could hear the air conditioning hum. Click, my tree. The photo filled the screen. 66-year-old heritage oak. 40 feet tall, branches spreading over the house my father built. This tree was planted by my father, James Webb, World War II veteran, Normandy and Battle of the Bulge. On the day I was born, May 17, 1966. Click the destruction, chainsaw operators, wood chips flying. My father's tree being murdered at 6:47 a.m. while I stood in pajamas screaming stop. Linda Pemberton Ashford ordered this tree destroyed without my permission, without city permits, in violation of heritage tree protections. Then she billed me $8,500 for the destruction. Click. Mom in the hospital. The photo hit like a fist. Mom in the hospital bed, oxygen tank, monitors beeping, tears on her face. The image I had taken 3 hours after the tree came down, when stress sent her blood pressure to 180/110. This is my mother, Ellen Webb, 82 years old. Stage 4, lung cancer. She witnessed the tree destruction from her window. The stress hospitalized her. The doctor told me another incident like that could kill her. My voice cracked slightly on that last sentence. Not planned, just real. The audience wasn't just silent anymore. Several people were crying. Click, the foreclosure notice. 47,000 in fraudulent fines, 72 hours to pay or lose Dad's house. Linda Pemberton Ashford sent me this notice while my mother was dying, while I was providing end-of-life care, threatening to steal the house my father built with his bare hands because I wouldn't destroy a 66-year-old tree. I turned to face Linda directly. You made a mistake, Mrs. Ashford. You assumed I was just a tired son caring for his mother. Too busy, too stressed, too defeated to fight back. Linda's face was white as paper. Her attorney was frantically whispering in her ear, but she wasn't listening. What you didn't know, I continued, is that I spent 28 years sending people like you to federal prison. I have built RICO cases against Chicago crime families. I have dismantled political corruption rings in New Jersey. I have seized $340 million in criminal assets. Click final slide. Mugshot template with Linda's and Brett's faces. Below it, pending federal indictment, 97 counts, maximum sentence, 140 years combined. The audience erupted, shouting, crying. Ray Thompson stood up shouting, "You tried to steal my house." Hector Martinez was on his feet. Betty Wu was sobbing. Linda stood up, shaking, trying to shout over the noise. "This is a witch hunt. I have done nothing wrong. These are false accusations, and Mrs. Ashford," I said quietly, and somehow my voice cut through the chaos. "I have 400 pages of evidence that says otherwise, financial records, victim testimony, recorded conversations, security footage, email chains, bank statements, your own admission on recorded HOA meetings." Brett grabbed his attorney's arm. "Get us out of here." The attorney stood up. "I am withdrawing from representation. You lied to me about everything." He walked out. Brett's attorney followed. Linda and Brett stood there alone. Two people in expensive suits who had just realized they had attacked a federal agent for 6 months and documented every crime in writing. I pulled out my phone and sent a 3-letter text to Special Agent Park. Now the back doors opened. 8 FBI agents entered, led by Special Agent Park. 4 IRS-CI agents came through the side doors, led by Special Agent Mendoza. 2 U.S. Marshals walked in through the front entrance. The room fell silent. Special Agent Park approached Linda and Brett with the casual authority of someone who had done this 1,000 times. "Linda Pemberton Ashford. Brett Ashford, you are under federal arrest." Linda actually screamed, "What? You cannot arrest me. I haven't done anything." Park pulled out the warrant. "You are charged with wire fraud, 47 counts, mail fraud, 23 counts, RICO conspiracy, 1 count, elder abuse, 12 counts, tax evasion, 6 counts, money laundering, 4 counts, witness intimidation, 3 counts, and destruction of a protected heritage tree, 1 count, 97 federal charges." Mendoza added, "Combined potential sentence of 140 years. Brett tried to run, actually turned and ran for the side exit like he was in a movie. A U.S. Marshal caught him in 3 steps, tackled him to the ground in front of 400 witnesses and 6 television cameras, handcuffed him while he shouted about his rights." Linda was crying now, mascara running down her face. "I want my lawyer." "Your attorney just withdrew," Park said calmly. "You will get a public defender." The handcuffs clicked around her wrists. The perp walk through City Hall was something I will remember forever. 470 people watching in silence as Linda and Brett were led out in handcuffs. Every victim was there. Every elderly homeowner they had terrorized. Every family they had tried to destroy. Ray Thompson stood as they passed. "That is for my fence." Hector Martinez. "That is for Rosa." Betty Wu just cried. Tears of relief finally released after years of fear. As Linda passed me, she looked at me with pure hatred. "You ruined my life." I met her eyes calmly. "No, Mrs. Ashford. You ruined your own life when you cut down my father's tree." They were loaded into federal vehicles and driven away. The audience erupted in applause, cheering, crying, hugging. People I would never met shook my hand, thanked me, told me I was a hero. I wasn't a hero. I was just a son who kept a promise. Councilwoman Rodriguez called for order. When the room quieted, she made a motion. I moved to immediately dissolve the Pinewood Estates, HOA pending criminal proceedings. The vote was unanimous. My phone rang, the hospice nurse. "Marcus, you need to come home. Your mother is asking for you." I left City Hall while the celebration was still happening, drove home through streets I had known my whole life, and walked into the house my father built. Mom was awake, weak, barely conscious, but awake. "Did you get them?" she whispered. I sat beside her bed and took her hand. "Yes, Mom, federal agents arrested them an hour ago. The house is safe. The house is safe. Dad's house forever." She smiled, the first real smile I had seen in weeks. "He would be so proud of you. I did it for you both." "I can rest now," she said. She fell asleep holding my hand. That night, peacefully, without pain, my mother passed away. She was 82 years old, wife of a World War II veteran, mother of a federal agent, witness to justice served. I kept my promise. The federal trial began 9 months later in the spring that followed Mom's death. I had spent those months settling her estate, planting a new oak sapling where Dad's tree had stood, and watching Linda and Brett's empire crumble in spectacular fashion. The prosecution was led by Osa Michael Chen, backed by the mountain of evidence I had built. 847 pages of documentation, 47 witnesses, financial forensics that tracked every stolen dollar through shell companies and offshore accounts. Linda and Brett both pleaded not guilty initially. Their new attorneys, public defenders, since they couldn't afford private counsel, tried to build a defense around administrative oversight and misunderstanding HOA authority. That defense lasted until week 2, when Brett flipped. His attorney made a deal: testify against Linda in exchange for reduced sentencing. Brett took it without hesitation, some honor among thieves. His testimony was devastating. Linda planned the whole thing, Brett said on the stand, not meeting her eyes. She identified elderly homeowners with valuable properties. We would target them with violations, escalate fines, make their lives hell until they agreed to sell. I would purchase below market value through my development company. We had split the profit. "How much did you make over 6 years?" Chen asked, combined. "About $1.2 million. The courtroom erupted in gasps. "And the HOA fees you collected from all residents?" "That was just operational expenses, management fees, contractor payments to family." "You mean embezzlement?" Brett's attorney objected, but the damage was done. Linda's defense crumbled after that. When she took the stand, Chen destroyed her with her own words: emails, recorded meetings, the Facebook posts she had deleted, but we had preserved. "Mrs. Ashford, you wrote in this email to Brett, the web property is perfect for Phase 2 development. Remove tree, reduce value, force sale. Is that correct?" Linda's face was ashen. "That is taken out of context. The email is dated the 15th of March, 3 weeks before you ordered the tree destroyed." "What context am I missing?" She had no answer. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all 97 counts. The sentencing hearing was 2 weeks later. I testified as a victim, reading a statement I had written the night before. My father built the house that Linda Ashford tried to steal. He survived Normandy, came home, and built something with his own hands, because that is what men of his generation did. They built, they created. They gave their children better lives than they had. Linda Ashford destroyed the tree my father planted the day I was born. She hospitalized my dying mother with stress. She terrorized elderly veterans and widows and retired teachers because they had property she wanted. This isn't about revenge. It is about accountability. It is about making sure that no other family has to fight a federal case just to keep the house their father built. The judge, a 60-year-old woman who had been on the federal bench for 20 years, looked at Linda with something close to contempt. "Mrs. Ashford, in my 20 years on this bench, I have rarely seen such calculated cruelty. You targeted the most vulnerable members of your community, elderly veterans, widows, people on fixed incomes, and you terrorized them for profit. You destroyed a 66-year-old heritage tree out of spite. You hospitalized an 82-year-old cancer patient who died months later. The sentencing guidelines suggest 8 to 10 years. I am sentencing you to 12 years in federal prison. Restitution of $470,000 to victims. Fine of $250,000 to the federal government. 5 years supervised release. And you are banned from serving on any HOA board for life." Linda broke down sobbing. Her sister Carol, in the gallery, cried too. Brett got 5 years as a cooperating witness. His real estate license was revoked permanently. All properties acquired through the scheme were forfeited to the victims. The co-conspirators, Linda's brother, Brett's cousin, the other board members got 18 to 36 months each, plus restitution and probation. Asset seizure began immediately. Linda and Brett's homes, worth a combined $2 million, were sold at auction. Brett's development company assets, $340,000, offshore accounts we had tracked, $180,000 recovered, jewelry, vehicles, everything, $85,000, total recovered, $1,805,000. The restitution process took 6 months. Every victim family received their money back plus 18% interest as calculated by the court. Ray and Dorothy Thompson, $26,740 returned. Hector Martinez, $36,020. Betty Wu, $22,040. Me, $59,700. Every dollar of fines Linda had charged, plus the tree removal bill, plus the fraudulent foreclosure amount. The remaining funds were distributed as victim compensation. Every family affected got $10,000 from the settlement fund. I donated my restitution to the neighborhood association we had formed to replace the HOA. We used it to plant trees, fix sidewalks, help elderly residents with home repairs. The kind of community support the HOA was supposed to provide but never did. I stood at Mom's grave on a Saturday morning in May, exactly 1 year after the trial. The cemetery was quiet, except for birds and the distant sound of someone mowing grass. Her headstone sat beside Dad's, matching granite, simple and dignified. Ellen Marie Webb, 1942-2024, beloved wife and mother, James Webb, 1924-2001, WYB veteran, Normandy. I laid flowers on both graves, gardenias for Mom, her favorite for Dad. I brought a photo of the new oak tree, now 4 feet tall, growing in the exact spot where he had planted the original in 1966. I kept the house safe, Dad, I said to the granite. Mom died knowing it was protected, knowing justice happened. Behind the cemetery, I could see the old neighborhood, Pinewood Estates. Now Pinewood Estates without an HOA, just neighbors being neighbors. The way it used to be, the way it should be. Ray and Dorothy Thompson had celebrated their 60th wedding anniversary last month. I had attended, brought potato salad, listened to Ray tell stories about the old days when Dad was still alive. Hector Martinez had remarried. His new wife Anna helped him maintain Rosa's garden, the one Linda had fined him for during Rosa's illness. It was beautiful now, full of flowers and vegetables and the kind of life Rosa would have loved. Betty Wu's garden gnomes were everywhere. 30 years of gifts from former students, no longer subject to HOA approval. Her yard looked like a fairy tale kingdom. She loved it. The neighborhood was thriving in ways Linda's HOA never allowed. Property values were up 15%. Turns out buyers prefer neighborhoods without tyrannical homeowners associations. Who knew? Brett's luxury development project had been canceled. The land was returned to green space, a small park where kids now played soccer and families had picnics. Linda was in year 1 of 12 at FCI Alderson, Federal Women's Prison. Her job was janitorial duty at 12 cents an hour. Her cellmate was a former real estate developer, also convicted of fraud. Small world. I had received 7 letters from her over the past year, all attempting some form of apology. I returned every one unopened. Some things don't deserve forgiveness. My federal case became precedent. Other investigators started using my methods to prosecute HOA fraud nationwide. Congressional hearings were held. Reform legislation was proposed, the Webb Act, though I told them to name it something else. 7 states passed new laws, mandatory financial audits for HOAs, over 50 homes, public disclosure requirements, elder abuse protections, restrictions on foreclosure power. The FBI formed an HOA fraud task force. They asked me to consult. I agreed, working from home, helping other families facing what I had faced. 43 similar cases were prosecuted in the first year alone. Estimated victims helped, over 2,300 families. Total recovered funds, $18 million. Not bad for a retired federal agent caring for his dying mother. I was home now in the house Dad built, the house I had promised Mom I would protect. The oak sapling was visible from my office window, growing strong, just like Dad said the original would outlive us all. My phone buzzed with an email from Oregon, another HOA victim, asking for help. I opened my template response, the one I had created and shared freely online, and started typing. Document everything. Request financial records. Contact your state attorney general. If elder abuse is involved, contact the FBI. Attached. Template for federal complaint. I signed it, Marcus J. Webb, retired special agent, IRS CI. Then added a personal note. HOAs can be legitimate community organizations, but they can also be criminal enterprises in disguise. Know the difference. Protect your neighbors, and never ever mess with a veteran's tree. I hit send and looked at Dad's photo on my desk. Him in his army uniform, young and serious, and ready to fight. I had fought my own war. Different battlefield spreadsheets instead of trenches, federal court instead of combat, but I had won, just like he taught me to. The doorbell rang. My daughter Sarah visiting from Seattle with my grandkids. They wanted to help plant flowers around the new oak tree. I walked outside into sunshine, into the yard Dad built, and Mom loved, and I had defended, and watched 27-year-olds argue about where the petunias should go. This was what I had fought for. Not revenge, not even justice, really. Family, legacy, home. The tree would outlive us all, just like Dad promised, and Linda Pemberton Ashford would serve 12 years in federal prison just like she deserved. Some trees grow, some people fall, that is justice. The end authors note this story is based on a composite of real HOA fraud cases prosecuted in the United States between 2015-2024. While Marcus Webb is fictional, the methods used by Linda and Brett Ashford's systematic targeting of elderly homeowners, excessive fines, forced property acquisition, financial embezzlement have occurred in documented cases across multiple states. If you suspect HOA fraud in your community, contact your state attorney general's office or the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. Your home is worth fighting for.